Mother, can you hear me? Hey guys, it's Alex Williamson. What's going on? It's Alex Williamson, and I'm here. And guess what? Welcome. I wasn't going to be back for a number of weeks, but now I am back, and I want to talk about the new bill that is all the talk of the town. So let's jump in and talk about that. And I'm going to invite my friend Alyssa Bentley, who is a fellow fish keeper from the GSAS Club here in Seattle, to join us. So let's get rolling. Alyssa, hello.
Hello.
So we are like literally already going. So yeah, I hope that works for you.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I was in your chat anyway, so.
Oh yeah, me in the chat. It's like I'm not actually. I'm late. I'm like 5 minutes late every time. So.
That's okay. But now I can't answer questions anymore. I'm not watching the chat, so just.
Right. Well, welcome to the channel, first of all.
Thank you.
So for folks who are curious, Alyssa's a fellow fish keeper in the Seattle area with me, and we have a lot of the same interests, such as the little noodly faced catfish species, and
Yes.
El Plecos and shrimp and all sorts of stuff. But I bugged her. I was like, Alyssa, I want help with this, because honestly, I wasn't going to come back to YouTube right away because I am still kind of out of it with the muscle relaxers and anti-inflammatories. I've turned down the narcotic pain meds, but I'm definitely still a little loopy. So I need a seeing eye dog to guide me through how to be a human, you know? So I need a good example of how to be a human. So I called you. Yes.
Okay. I don't know if that's going to work well for you, but learning how to be a human, but you know, that's okay.
Well, so today I just kind of wanted to talk about, you know, I put up a video, obviously, I think it was Friday. Was it Friday or Thursday? I think it might have even been Thursday night, which was, yeah, it was right after my surgery. It's all a blur. But I saw that the law passed, and basically the law that we're talking about is the HR-4521, I believe, House Bill, big old act. But there's 3,000 pages of stuff there. Some of it's everything from human trafficking in the fish, like fishing business. Apparently, they bring in a lot of Southeast Asian and Polynesian people coming, get hidden in the bottom of the boats, basically, and then like pretend to be workers and come to Alaska and Washington that way. And so the bill covers a really broad range of stuff. I mean, all sorts of stuff from that all the way up to, you know, there's things about why not to build things in China, like injection molding being made here and paper, you know, products to not to be manufactured overseas. And so it's a wide sweeping bill. They put these things together. They work for years on them. And then literally this bit that we're talking about. So you should be informed. You should go research it. I mean, obviously, I think it's pretty extreme to expect everyone to read every bill or act, but there is, I mean, do the spark notes, read the overview of bills and things going up before Congress and the House. And you know, this one though, they snuck in a little 4-page insert literally 12 hours before it went through, which is called a rider or a margin write-in or pork or whatever you want to call it, a pet project, which is kind of ironic because it could eliminate pets.
Pet
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so historically, if you hear people complaining about pork in government, this is what they're talking about. It could be that some senator or some company had an agenda, and they know that every Democrat's going to say yes to this bill because they've all been working on it for a month or a year or however long. And so they say, well, let's add in this, or let's bargain basically and throw in, in my district, I need a road put in. I need this bridge put in. So all these random things get shoved in as kind of just easy. Like they assume it on something they assume is going to get passed across party lines, or even better, if it's going to get passed across both parties, then it's great. But what I want to kind of tell people is that we really need to approach this not as a partisan subject, first of all, because fish keepers, we've got Democrats, Republicans, anarchists, Satanists, preachers, pastors. I mean, it's everyone. As we know, this is a very, very wide hobby. And I kind of wanted to, and, that's the reason why I was like, Alyssa, do you want to kind of, just freestyle with me and throw in your 2 cents? Because Alyssa is another point of view other than mine, and a well-informed individual. And so I, feel free to just say, Alex, shut up. I have something to say too, if you have an opinion on something. But yeah, so the thing that I've been seeing is, I think it's good that people are worked up about this in the sense that they know it exists. And what it is the thing that the thing that they wrote on and added is that they want to alter, or I've read in some wording it says repeal or replace or amend, but it's an act called the Lacey Act that's over 100 years old. And it started as an act to limit wildlife importation. And then over time, they added to that. And it started as like, let's not import elephants, and like start farming elephants in Kansas or whatever, like pretty like big, endangered, whatever, just things that shouldn't be there. At that same time, Teddy Roosevelt was actually, right after this law passed, McKinley passed this law, who basically all he did as president was got killed and / died. But then it became Roosevelt, the first Roosevelt, and he was very big on preserving things, parks. And so there was kind of this national movement of like, our resources aren't endless, and we need to protect our forests and our streams and our animals. I mean, the bison at that point in time, there were like, I don't know, 100 or something, down from 50 million or whatever the max was. Please don't quote me on those numbers. But at one point, humans killed, it's over 1 million bison, whatever the number was. It's over 1 million, and humans did that, and people were realizing that's, we can make a difference here. And when we bring a new animal in that isn't from an area, it can have massive implications. So this law, in the theme of that, the Lacey Act has been used from everything from like limiting ivory and stuff to paper products from forests that are illegally cut down and things like that. Now, there's some people saying, oh, the Lacey Act is not of any use. We never used it. Yeah. Well, it actually does get used quite a bit in deciding what can be imported or not so much exported, but what can be imported. And, the thing is that it may not have to be used in the country a lot, because you can use other things like trade treaties and like other things like anti-ivory or anti-poaching laws that may be more powerful. But it's that underlying law that's there. And so the other thing is, you don't want to write a representative and say, let's get rid of the Lacey Act. like that is also like something that maybe you don't mean when you say. So a lot of people are kind of not using the nuanced language that we probably should, you know, in dissecting this thing. So
right. So first of all, being a relatively uneducated in the political and legal arts person, I was first not really aware that there was one act that was preventing certain critters from getting into the country. I knew that we have a blacklist of things that are not allowed to come in. I know that we're not allowed to import ivory or tiger parts or cut down old growth forests in certain countries where the forests are being decimated and that kind of thing. You can bring those woods in. Like, I knew that, but I didn't know why or how. So then the Lacey Act came up, and what happened? Everybody panicked as soon as they heard about it, because what did they read? This is going to kill the hobby. You know, nobody's going to be able to do anything anymore. All of our fish are going to be illegal, every single one, because if it can live in Florida, then therefore it's going to be illegal, and the only fish that are going to be legal to have anymore is going to be goldfish, which doesn't make any sense, because what do we have a huge issue with all the time?
Right.
Goldfish.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Minnesota just pulled 60,000 of them out of one lake, actually.
Right.
That would be
Where
a
do
species.
goldfish not thrive? Antarctica? I'm
Yeah,
sure there's probably got to be goldfish in Antarctica at this point.
there probably are in the lab for sure.
Yeah, and so that doesn't make sense. And then my thought, because what do I keep? Plecos?
Yes. Well, you got a lot on the line, and that's why I was like, hey, I'll hit up Alyssa. You know, she's got all sorts of plecos that, you know, and also, you know, the other problem with this law is it doesn't outline anything. And a lot of people who aren't in the hobby don't know, but just because you have a species that is a hybrid or doesn't have a name or isn't described doesn't mean it's some exotic unknown species. We've had some of these species in the hobby for 30, 40 years that just nobody's gotten around to doing the DNA or had a reason to care, you know, to separate whether it's the same pleco or a color variant or whatever.
Right.
And so you wouldn't want something illegal because it's got spots and another one has stripes, but they're the same species technically. Like if you've got the other species approved, you know. So
right. Well, and I'm just going to speak on fish because that's what I know the most of, and I know that a lot of people are in the reptile hobby and the bird hobby and all that. They're all
tarantulas,
up in arms, right? Everybody is freaking out if they want to do something other than keep a dog or a cat, which also cats and dogs, if they get out and are loose, they also run amok and create a huge issue in our ecosystems. But anyway,
something like you know, house cats, I was reading, do billions of dollars of damage a year to wildlife, and I mean they kill. It's something ridiculous, like 7 billion birds in America every year. Like it's a lot. It's like 20 or 30 birds per cat out there, you know.
Right.
So,
which is why my cat lives inside. But you know, whatever. So after I freaked out a bit, because all I could think was they're gonna say pleco is a pleco is a pleco. Plecos are killing the manatees. All my plecos should be put down. And I'm like, I've got thousands of dollars worth of plecos on the line, literally. I thought about it, and I read. So I read and tried to parse through the Lacey Act amendment, because it's the amendment that's the issue.
Yeah.
And the part of the amendment that is freaking everybody out, and rightly so, is the like, what is the definition of more than minimal quantities?
Right. Yeah. That's the other thing that like I as a hobby, I really hope people like let's I mean, the rhetoric being turned up, it's good that it got everybody's attention. But now it's like we need to actually get something to change, and we need to be surgical about, you know, if the other thing like that I wanted to just say out of the gates that I forgot was basically that, you know, if you come in and say this is mostly a Democrat backed bill at the moment that this happens to be attached to. However, it was a Republican who inserted this, and lobbyists who drafted the proposal that were backed by big business happened to be Republican. That's not unusual. Things get inserted into bills all the time by both parties. I mean, it's so we need to not start going to our corners and saying like, you know, oh, I hate Trump or Biden or, you know, whatever political thing you believe or want to say. Like, let's just stop wasting time with our opinions about that, and let's be surgical about what it is we need to be doing and saying and who we need to contact. Because if you contact a Democratic senator and just tell them off, basically, that what do your elected officials care about? Votes and money, you know, re-election and money, basically, for the most part, you know.
Right.
And so you at least have to pretend that you're a constituent that may vote for them, or at least not mention that you're one who wouldn't vote for them, you know, if they're going to listen, in my opinion. No need to lie, but don't go off on a tirade, in my opinion, because it just doesn't get anything done. So we can have that conversation later, but I just wanted to say that too, while you were mentioning, you know, the Lacey Act, and that we specifically need to work with that. So
yeah. Yes. And so the things that the things that I know is, let's say I bring in two plecos from somewhere. That's like the most minimal amount of quantities that I can bring in, right?
mm-hmm.
And then I breed them. And then I have 120. And then the next month I have another 120. And then the next month I have another 120. Well, now those are locally bred fish that we have a lot of, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing that says that we can't have those. They're not going to come in and freaking bleach my tanks.
No.
So, and especially if, like, we already have state to state things like Florida can't have the Malaysian, no, what are they called? Mystery snails. They can't have them.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason they have apple
we can't. I know. Yeah. And we can't have, for that matter, we can't have crayfish of any sort. So
crayfish.
You and I.
But I can tell you right now, I know where to go if I want to get a crayfish from a store within the state of Washington.
Yeah, Petco. I'll call them out.
Well, I've seen them in a local shop.
Sure.
On the other side of the state. And I remember looking at them and being like, well, that sure looks like a crayfish. But they're calling it a lobster. And
right.
Therefore, there you go.
Vanilla lobster, yeah.
Right. And so I think that you have to pardon me, I have to.
Oh yeah, do what you got to do. I literally bugged Alyssa while she's water changing. I was like, hey, I wasn't going to go live because I told everyone I was hiding and healing from back surgery. But I just can't sit around the house and do nothing, especially with all this going on. I felt like I had to, you know, look at me, pay attention to me. I have an opinion. Right. I had to be live today.
Yeah. And so I think the main issue will be importing extremely rare fish that nobody's heard of. Now, if it's a fish that has a species name, it's already been described, like, I don't know, Betta smaragdina guitar. People have heard of it. They know where it is. They know where it comes from. They know what kind of conditions that it lives in. People can already know that it's a fish that's already here. You don't necessarily need to restrict it from coming in. I don't think that would be an issue.
Well, and so, yeah, that's just it is, yeah, we need to figure that piece out. You know what I mean? Like if this law, the minimum amounts, it says if it's been imported in the last year in minimum amounts, it would be whitelisted. If it has not been described to science, doesn't have a Latin name, or doesn't have an impact study, which we have professors in the chat right now, several different biologists that I see, that they know how expensive a grant can be to get an impact study on, on a national level done for, an ecological impact phase 1 or phase 2. I mean, bare minimum, we're talking $10,000, if not way, way, way more, So,
right.
So it can be expensive. And, yeah, if we have to do it for every fish.
And I know that, again, going back to plecos, we know that there are a lot of species out there that have not even been taxonomically described, and so they don't have species names. I have 2 in my fish room right now that don't have an actual species name, and then of course there's a bunch of variants that are the man-made stuff that can't survive outside. Every time I try and stick one outside just to see what happens, then it just dies. Like, really quick. It's usually just a cull, but it happens. But there are people, I know people who are in school right now for like a PhD with taxonomy to try to become fish taxonomists. Like, they want to do freshwater taxonomy,
Yeah.
And they can't find jobs that way because nobody's interested because there's not money in it. Well, maybe this will bring money into it, and then they can have a reason for being in order to try to get this stuff going.
Right. And so
I would like to do that.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying too, like, brings up a really good point, and I have to give credit where credit's due. Joel Christensen or Corvus Osun, Auskin, I never say his name right, whatever. You guys know who I'm talking about. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. But he's a fellow YouTuber, and yesterday he kind of came out and said, I love this act, essentially. There's nothing wrong with it. Kind of the opposite of the other freak out. And Alyssa and I were both in there, and he did have some interesting good points. So, I mean, he did, for me, illustrate that the spirit of this may actually be something that was done by people who care about the ecology of, our country, and they want, they don't want to eliminate all fish necessarily. This isn't coming from some authoritarian rule place. Like, that's not how sweeping, powerful executive things come into play, is not, this way. So
all fish, all snakes, all other reptiles, amphibians, and any mammal that people keep that is not a dog or a cat.
Yeah.
That would make no sense. That would put a lot, like, if that was what it was and all we could have was dogs and cats now, or barnyard animals, common barnyard animals.
Well, so, yeah, I mean, it would have to be
alpacas or nothing. Like, are they really going to go around and just, like, euthanize every single land in the country? Are we going to go to door and just, like, break down people's homes and search through, like, everybody's freaking house? Like, what? there's 330 some odd million Americans in this whole country, and then how would that weird scenario even possibly happen? That would be unsafe to everybody.
Right.
I don't think people are thinking things through with their logic mind.
Right. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Which
definitely.
I wasn't at first too. I was reacting in fear at first as well. I was very much like, I'm gonna have to put them all down.
Yeah.
I have to get out the clove oil and have a really nice garden one year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem when they come out with legislation that is vague. Someone wants something done, and so they kind of write something vague as a placeholder, and then basically what it means is we still need to outline all of this. Now, if this passes just as is, though, this amendment to the Lacey Act, the problem is it does give the power to the Secretary of the Interior to define what minimum quantities are and what. So, does that mean you have to have 50,000 of a fish imported last year for it to be a common species? Or do you need 50, And to me, I love keeping fish that are endangered or that are maybe extinct in the wild totally, and only people have them in aquariums like Goodeids and things. And
like the white cloud mountain minnow.
Right, exactly. And, those fish, the only hope of them being reintroduced is really the aquarium hobby, honestly. Or a concerted government program, which doesn't exist at this point for most things. Like the Devil's Hole pupfish is like an example where there is a program, but most other things there's not, and especially not things outside of the U.S. So I think that that people need to see that this is still in the works and have a little bit of foresight to know that bills don't just sweep in usually. And change everything. There's billions of dollars on the line here, and people will lose their mind if we were to just make a bunch of things illegal. So realistically, money is what makes a lot of things happen in this country, and with legislation too. And so there are mechanisms, whether you like it or not, that are just socially there that if you look at history, generally things are not just banned by one thing. You have to make an amendment to the Constitution to do some big giant ban, and that requires 2/3 of Congress. So the other laws, the other thing that's really important is it even enforceable? Like what you were saying is, where they're going to come to people's houses and take their fish. Even if the law did say we're going to come to your house, take your fish, how do you go to that many houses? How do you know who has a house? Who's going to pay for people to be in a uniform and go to houses and dispose of fish? It's just, that's not at all what's going to happen. So I think just a little bit of a reality check was really key with this issue. And that's, why I also asked you to come on the show, is because you and I both reacted like, we care about our fish. What's going to happen, But at the same time, there's a more realistic nuance to, okay, what's going to happen? And also to how you should write your senators, who you should contact. I still think those are the great things to do if you are of the opinion that I am, which is that this is too vague. I think the thing that was pointed out, though, by Joel that was really interesting was that there are $150 million allotted annually to run this whole act or program right now. And and that could be really a great way to get the scientific names figured out for some of these fish, or to finally sort out what pleco species can survive in tepid water versus not. Because there are some major issues with like Texas, Louisiana, Florida. What species, you know,
Yeah.
there's some species that can survive outside of, you know, just the extreme south. And we should figure that out. I mean, if we don't, we're going to get those things and more taken away because of the impact when that does happen inevitably, you know? So as a hobby, we also need to take responsibility and say, as a hobby, we want the same goals. And, you know, by saying we want the same goals as people who may be just as happy to take all of our fish for all they care, it gives us control of the narrative as well. So to me, that's why we need to say, like, this is a conversation that the hobby needs to be a part of, you know?
Right. And I'm hearing a lot of opinions being passed around as rumors that people are taking to heart to say this is the true thing, which I think is unfair to human intelligence, if we can say that. What have I heard? Who's backing this bill? Is it PETA? PETA wants to get rid of all pets everywhere, all the time, right? Everyone wants to be, PETA wants everybody to be vegan and have no animal testing or anything like that, right? Is it being backed by big pet? The people who supply big pet are against it. So I would say probably not then.
Or is it a double? Is it a double fake out, Alyssa? Maybe they want to claim that they are actually super pro environment, but really they're the ones behind it. No, yeah, it's right. Every Democrat diehard friend I have is like, it's the Republicans. I knew this would happen. Every person that has any reason to be on the other side is like, I hate Joe Biden. I can't believe he did that. We really need to stop that. We need to look at the issues at hand. You know, like you said, the rumors of what this is about, people are just using this for whatever end, to whatever end they want. I know Alyssa's doing water changes, so yeah, she's...
Yeah, I just had to turn it off so I don't flood my basement again. Through inattentiveness. But yeah. Yeah, so okay, so what are the good things about this?
Sure, yeah, that's a great thing. Yeah, let's talk about that.
If we can't import that much, well, maybe our breeding or home breeding fish, maybe that becomes more valuable and more important.
Well, and maybe they give out licenses, because right now what's scary is there seems to be a blacklist and a whitelist, and the blacklist doesn't just ban imports, it bans species. And that's what people are assuming will be the end result of this bill. We need to write our representatives and say, if that's so, then there needs to be a good reason for why it's on the blacklist rather than the white, you know, because in America, as a general rule, we try to say that we believe in innocent until proven guilty, you know? And if we have a new species and we don't know if it's bad or good, I mean, I'm not saying we should let it be imported in huge amounts or whatever, but this isn't a completely blind subject. You know, you're probably not going to get a fish from the tropics that all of a sudden just takes over Minnesota or something. You know, we know a little more about biology than that. You know, so there's some nuance that I feel like this law could put into place. Even just for instance, if this fish can survive in, I don't know, 45-degree water, you know, for 24 hours, maybe it needs to be regulated or controlled, or you need a special something for it or whatnot. I mean, whatever it may be, but it
Right.
seems like there should be a biological marker or standard or a scientifically based reason for why we're banning things, rather than, you know, Washington State and other states do this a lot, but they literally just ban things by taxonomy. So they banned all sorts of things, including the crayfish that are native here at first. You know, they had to make an amendment to the bill when they realized that they'd called the ones that live here illegal, because they just Googled that probably whatever crayfish were out there and made them all illegal. So, you know, that's the other thing is, you know, there will be a year-long period where people can weigh in on this, a public weigh-in period. However, it does state that the Secretary of the Interior, who is not a biologist or ecologist,
Right.
has the ultimate say,
Yeah,
and
the
can, yeah, can come in and just say, nope, yep, you know. Because the other thing I wanted to say, and then we'll go back to more good things about this bill. But the other thing I wanted to say before I forgot, because my mind's a little scattered still since the surgery. But, you know, the other thing that's important with government and activism and bills and just how America works is, if you pass a law now, it doesn't just apply to now and the things going on now. When you pass that law, it will then be there in the future. It is a precedence. And so if we pass a law that is very vague, and yet the Secretary of the Interior happens to do all the things we want, and they say, this is all whitelist, you can have all those fish that you're used to, nothing's banned, don't worry, and they only ban a few things like snakeheads or, you know, trouble species that have caused issues in the past, say that's the outcome. That's not good legislation either, because someone comes in next administration, gets assigned, and maybe they want to or, you know, blacklist everything, and or vice versa. Maybe you want X, Y, and Z blacklisted, and they come in. I mean, we saw this under Trump. You could get your whole EPA just dismantled. So we don't know what's going to happen necessarily in the future. So that's why it's good to have laws that outline the details of the law. And so I think that's what was most alarming to a lot of people, was that there's a lot left to interpretation about this law. And at the end of the day, most pets, I would argue they're essential, but most people will say they're not essential things. You know what I mean? They're not. It's a hobby. It's unless it's a seeing eye dog or something, they're not a necessity. Now, to me, my whole life is based around them, basically. But they are, you know, I have to say they're not. I don't need them to live, though. So you do have to realize that at what cost does our hobby get to keep things? You know, we want to keep these fancy exotic fish from all over the world, but should we be able to do that if it kills the environment of fish where we live now, outside of our house, right out the door? So I think this law at least highlights, you know, that conversation. You know, even if that wasn't at all the purpose of this bill, it does bring up that, you know, that introspection that we should have as hobbyists, as a hobby, of, well, what kind of stewards do we want to be? What kind of fish do we want to maybe say we shouldn't allow? Like you were saying, the white cloud minnow, there's tons of those in captivity, but the Tan's minnow or white cloud minnow or meteor minnow, whatever you want to call them, they're pretty much extinct in the wild, and for all we know. And in Canada, they're illegal because they can survive outside under the ice in extreme conditions. They can in a big lake. They can survive in torpor, or basically stasis, or what do they call that? Hibernation. Under the ice, if the lake's deep, you know, there's pockets that stay 45, 50 degrees sometimes, and they can survive in that area. And so Canada, they're illegal. And that's something that maybe I don't happen to believe this, but maybe it needs to be illegal in the US too. I'm not saying I'm the one who should make that call, but I'm just saying this bill does bring up some of those things that we haven't maybe examined as a hobby, that we do need to look at that inconvenient biology, the cracks that are there that things could slip through in the future, you know.
Things that do make me nervous are fish that live outside in ponds, in our areas without heat, all year, right? And birds that wade in those ponds.
Yes.
And then the eggs that are hatched or that are laid in like the surface plants can get stuck to the feathers of those birds, and then those birds fly away with their wings.
I mean,
and
that's
then they land in other bodies of water. And then those little eggs can hatch and become an issue, and that does concern me.
Yeah,
it does.
Well, I mean,
which is
and
why
that's
when I do water changes, I don't even put my water down the drain. I put it in my garden outside. Like, here we go. Oh, we're still running. I have a big container that just has a sump on it, and it pumps out the water right into my garden on the dry ground. Well, dry-ish, as dry as it gets here in Washington. And everything just tends to just die and get dried out there. And so therefore, well, it's not like I've got a bunch of egg scatterers, but I feel pretty good that I'm not going to have wading birds coming through and getting eggs stuck on their feathers and then landing in ponds. Like, that's just not a thing that's an issue. I think the biggest issue would be scrub jays digging through my, I don't know, dirt out there and then maybe eating a worm.
You are being far more conscientious and thoughtful than most people in the hobby. I would go out on a limb and say. I'm not gonna lie. I'll flush a dead fish down the toilet sometimes in Seattle. Our water happens, our wastewater happens to go out into the Puget Sound and out about 400 yards offshore and is just jettisoned into the water. In some cases, like there's filters for big old, plastics and things, but it's pretty bad. Like if it's not sewage, if it's just wastewater, we just kind of toss it into the Puget Sound, which if I had saltwater tanks, I would probably think about it more, about what I put down that. And it just depends where you live in our area too. Some areas, they have treatment plants and it doesn't matter. They're going to catch anything that basically goes into the water. Other places, it just goes right into the storm drains and that's that. It goes out into the wild. I think it's still true, but last I checked, Victoria, BC, they just literally put all their sewage, they treat it lightly with like a scrubbing process that froths it, and then they just put it into the Strait of Juan de Fuca. But it's like third world type stuff, which you wouldn't expect from Canada, which has some very green and progressive laws in other places. It's just that city is very old construction and infrastructure. I'll have to check on that.
That is insane. That is insane. And here's why I say that. My dad worked at the wastewater treatment plant in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I grew up, for the entirety of my life until he just retired 5 years ago. And he has explained the process of how it works several times to me. Because you get the waste and it goes through first like a wide mesh screen to get the big stuff out of it. And then it goes through progressively smaller screens in order to get stuff like oftentimes the non-organic material that ends up going down the drain.
Sure.
And then you get, he called it enzymes, but I'm sure it was like a bacteria and enzyme product that was going through and eating up the
same kind of thing you'd put into same thing you'd put into like a septic tank. Like it helps break down.
Similar.
Yeah.
And you'd have like a series of settling ponds,
Mm-hmm.
of which they used a floating plant of some sort, and I don't know which one they used to use, but it would suck out the excess nitrates at the end. And by the last settling pond, they would then treat it with chlorine, I think, and then treat it again to counteract the chlorine, and then pump it into the Mississippi. And my dad used to brag that it was cleaner going into the Mississippi than the water of the Mississippi itself.
That wouldn't surprise me.
I just assumed that was the way that it was in every sewage treatment plant. And so now I'm concerned about Washington State's sewage situation.
Yeah. It's interesting.
I could ask him; he might know.
Yeah, I'm actually looking that up right now. Because now I said it during a live stream, so I got to put my money where my mouth is. So I'm just looking up right now. Victoria, BC, wastewater. Maybe I'm trying to think what would be the right term.
Wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, Victoria. Oh, okay. No, as of January 9th, 2021. There is a big old article on CBC that says, as of January 1st, Victoria no longer flushes raw sewage into the ocean after it opens the first water treatment plant on the island. So, yeah, that's pretty horrifying. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we got.
I have to talk to my dad about this.
Oh wait, why won't it focus? Come on.
Because it's not a face, and you've got a face blur.
Right. Oh, let me turn that off. Stupid face blur. So sometimes things surprise us. When I heard that, I was like, no way, that's not true. Like, maybe 8 years ago or something. And they're like, no, they just dump all their stuff right into the water, and then it comes into the Puget Sound or goes out to the ocean, because if you don't know the geography of where Alyssa and I live, this whole Seattle area is along a inlet or very long bay, a sound that comes in from the ocean. It's saltwater. So, but at the mouth of that bay is Victoria, BC, the town that is the capital of Canada's province of British Columbia. But it's an old city. Yeah. It's like a 200-year-old city. And apparently they just never got around to building any sort of water treatment plant.
Great.
So, yeah.
They are failing at Sim City right now.
Right. I know. I feel like, in the 90s, that was like something that we needed to put on as one of the basic checkoffs of a city, yet again, though, you got Seattle, which everyone calls a progressive city. We have the most regressive tax structure that there is in the country. So don't just assume things are the way you think they are in your head. Sometimes you should double check, but yeah, let's see if this was gonna.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And if you think about all the stuff that ends up going down the toilet that's not supposed to go down the toilet, I mean, and not even just like from children flushing their action figures down the toilet, but like people who just don't know flush things down the toilet that should let's
call a spade a spade a spade, like condoms and stuff. Like, I mean, people put lots of dumb things in the toilet that if they're just going straight out to sea, that's straight up gonna strangle some sort of seagull or something.
Yeah, because it looks like a jellyfish or a piece of seaweed or something. I know. Anyway, we've completely strayed from the topic. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Oh yeah, let's be a little interactive. Does anybody have any thoughts or concerns about this bill in the chat that they'd like to comment on? Because that's why I wanted to stream today, was mostly just to say hi guys, but also to say I still think this is important. The sky is probably not falling, but in the broadest interpretations of this bill, it could be pretty devastating to the hobby. We don't know what it's going to be yet. We don't know what the intention is or that yet. And there is a public period in which we will have time to complain and, put our 2 cents in. Now, if things go like they have been going lately, those public officials may not care at all what we have to say. That's the part that's scary. And that's why in my mind, even if we pass a law that the person in power or people in power handle just the way we want it now, if it's got a loophole or a way to be misused in the future, and we just say, oh, nobody would do that, that's so outside of the norms, well, people can get in power that will use every loophole they want, so don't just think about it for when your team's winning. Think about laws from when your team's losing too, just like the Supreme Court or something else. You got to you want someone moderate, even if you're extreme, because there's always another side to the coin. So I think most people would rather have something in the middle than one extreme or the other, and those are the only choices. That I may be wrong, but I think most people feel that way.
And really, when it comes to politics, it's not football. It's not American football or the rest of the world football. It's not football. We should not be thinking about it as teams.
No,
we shouldn't. We just shouldn't. We should be thinking about it as, this is legislation. This particular individual has these kinds of ideas and agendas. And the problem is that even in politics, in the House, in the Senate, whatever, is they all tend to be like, well, we're all on a team together and we're all going to vote together. And that is a thing that needs to stop. But
yeah.
I know.
And I'm gonna call it out because
person breeding fish in my face.
I'm gonna call it out, and I might be, I might get some flack for this. I might lose some subscribers. I already have thought about that, and I don't mean to chastise anybody who did it. Like, I understand your sentiment. I'm not mad. I'm just saying, let's not do this in the future, which is, I posted something about this law, and I get things saying, let's go Brandon. That has nothing to do with this law. Knock it off. Like, all you're going to do is piss off a potential ally who you could be writing Congress with. So let's put that aside. We're always fighting over these stupid things and blaming each other for who's at fault for things. And nobody's writing Congress in the meantime, or very few people realistically are. So I'm just saying, people always think they know my opinion. And so I'll have Democrats that say oh, you're such a dirty Republican. And then I'll have Republicans say you're such a dirty Democrat. And I mean, the joke is, I'm not either. I don't associate with either of those terms hardly at all. I have very bizarre political beliefs, and it doesn't matter what they are. It should be issue by issue anyways. But yeah, so I just feel like, let's stop splitting the hobby. The hobby needs to be unified right now, if anything. And if there's an issue that splits the hobby, it's understandable. If we should no longer catch wild fish. That's an issue I could see dividing the hobby, only captive bred fish. But if you feel that way, you feel that way, and I understand that. I can respect that. I don't feel that way. but I can understand it. But we don't need to be fighting about issues that aren't even related to the issue at hand. Like what leader did what, or what representative what. You know, a lot of people point out it's a Democratic bill. Well, it's a Republican insert. So, and beyond that, you know, who cares about either one of those things? We just need to deal with it at the end of the day. So, yeah, I don't know. Everybody goes to their corner and starts shouting the normal things and starts grouping things. And, you know, the other thing is, people see it as a symptom sometimes. I like to think of it in this wholesome anecdote, which is I go mushroom hunting every year, and I start looking for a specific, like maybe 10 different species. And when I'm looking in the leaves, they're very hidden. And so your eye gets very trained for like catching a glimpse of yellow and some like gills or a certain line or whatever. Or maybe red with white dots or whatever it may be, the thing that you're looking for. To the point that when you go inside, when you're done after, 6 hours of that, you start seeing it like on your bed sheets and stuff. You start seeing the patterns, So we need to like stop just relaying, these layers of default opinions and things and applying them when we have a subject that could use a little bit of nuance, could use a little bit of critical thinking. Maybe there are some things we need to change as a hobby. Maybe we do need to talk about that. Maybe it's a good time to do so in the months before or the months while that bill is being sorted out. So, yeah. Oh, Kitty.
She decided to come downstairs.
She's YouTube now. She's famous, Kitty.
Yeah.
Alyssa, do you have a YouTube channel?
Technically.
I tell people you do, but then sometimes it'll be, we've known each other now 5 or 6 years probably, like to some degree. How long?
I don't know. It's been since before the pandemic, so clearly it's been since for all time.
Yeah, exactly. But I was gonna say, I remember seeing whenever you joined GSAS, at least that long. So, yeah, but
your number is right after mine by
is it
6 numbers? Yeah.
I'm 1242.
Yeah, and I'm 1236.
Oh, okay. So you joined before me. Yeah, right when I joined. So yeah,
just barely, like probably within days.
So it was probably about 5 years ago. Yeah. Wow, interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I had a number.
Oh no! Now people are going to be able to identify it.
Oh no! I had a number as a kid in GSAS because my grandfather brought me. And on his family, thing or whatever. So we used his number when I was selling guppies later. But I tried to look out. I couldn't find it or anything. There wasn't a good record of it. I was kind of hoping to have his number, because he passed away.
It was probably
anyhow that has nothing
in some paperwork. Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably written on the back of like someone's copy of like North American Fish or something, in pencil. That's the way old fish clubs tend to operate. All right, I was gonna look at the comments here too.
There seems to be a lot.
Yeah, let's see here. TP and Fish Tank says, respectfully to both of you, I don't really trust anything that is 1,500 pages plus. Many reps don't read the bills in front of them, and we are just going to wait and see what else is in that bill. Are we just going to wait and see what's in that bill? Actually, almost every rep has paid people to parse that bill. That's what pages are for, not like book pages, like the people that work for free or very little money. You get grad students that are like political science majors or law students, and they work for a summer or for a year, and it is their job to read pages 1 through 50 and know everything about it and bring anything that conflicts with your representative about it. Now, that's more true with senators than it is with representatives. That's more true with like your two congressional or Senate representatives rather than your House representatives. House representatives can decide how they want to do things. There are some that are a little cowboy. They're like, I do things the way I've always done things, and don't even show up for meetings half the time. There's all sorts of different kinds of reps. Some are very hands-on and they're in every subcommittee, and others are like, I stay in my district with my people. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at that. Also, I wanted to say before I forgot, J4 Flower Horns, thank you so much for the $9.99 super sticker. I really do appreciate that. And of course, Alex Engelhart, I did see your super chat. I mean, he's like my patron. Is like, I'm not talking about Patreon, but like medieval king style. Like, I am able to live my life the way I live it because of this guy, like because of his donations. I mean, it's very kind of him. The $100 super chat blows my mind, and it is very much appreciated, especially as I am recovering. This is a great distraction. I'm glad I didn't have to remember much research or anything today to come on here and chat with folks and talk about this. But I've been in a lot of pain just sitting around and then walking, sitting, walking, looking at the fish, sitting, walking, and so this is a nice change of pace. But I can't lie, like I'm in quite a bit of pain and trying not to just take a bunch of pain pills and sit around the house or whatever. Like I didn't fill them for that reason. I feel like I would be more active and more gung-ho to get better quicker if I did. But I don't know if that, that's necessarily true, but that was my theory. Ugh.
Are they gonna have you set up with a physical therapist?
Yeah, in 5 weeks. I feel like the surgery happened weeks ago already. It's like, oh wait, it was just 4 days ago.
A couple days.
Yeah, I know. I'm ready to take on the world mentally. And then like I try to go get the mail and I'm like, oh, ow, just step off the curb a little bit too quickly or whatever. Yeah, I hadn't been able to walk without a cane the last 6 months very often, most days. And I can do that now, but it's painful. So I think that they did the goals of the surgery. I think they did make a big difference, at least to some degree, the surgery did. So that's good at least. But the healing times are like pretty substantial in that like 12 weeks is like the minimum before they say you'll know anything about how things will really end up. So yeah. But I couldn't stay away from YouTube. I couldn't. I know Anthony Mazeral, Portland, ? My wife will not let me go, I'm sure of that, but I would like to, and I'm working on it. I'm not supposed to be in any one position for more than 30 minutes right now. So that makes driving to Portland definitely by myself a no-go. But if someone else was driving, it'd be doable. So if I can find someone else who's going down, I'll probably find a way to come to Portland and not listen to against medical advice, as they say.
I would say that I would definitely not advise going against your doctor's advice or your wife.
Yeah, you're like a smart woman and all that, though. I'm like a dumb, stinky boy.
I just think because if you don't do what you're supposed to do, that's how people end up paralyzed for the rest of their life.
True. Yeah. That is true. Way to be a buzzkill, Alyssa.
That's me, Betty Buzzkill.
You're just gonna come to my house and pee in all my fish tanks next. Take all my plecos. I'm pretty sure that's
take all of your plecos. Actually, I will take one of your plecos.
You'll take my leopard frogs. Yeah.
No, you said you have a long fin male lemon,
Oh, yes.
and I
Yes,
will
I
take
do.
him.
Okay. Yeah, I need to get that to you, actually. He's not doing any good. I literally have a tank full of his babies right now. They're hybrid. They're not going to be. They're going to be either co-dominant or a mix of recessive and dominant. Like they're he mated with a short fin female. That's all. And the long fin isn't dominant. So the babies, I'm saying, are they would need to be bred back another generation, or with some luck, I guess, 25% would have the fins in the future if the babies have babies with each other. Maybe.
Oh, that's fascinating. See, now I really want him, because in my experience, every time you run into a long fin, it's always a dominant gene.
Oh,
so
really?
If you have a dominant, so if you have a long, like I have one, she's on the glass. Can I switch the camera around?
Yeah.
Usually. How do I do that?
Well,
I don't know, but
you can go to, you can go, oh, yeah.
You can see I've got one long fin, that's a calico red.
Yeah.
And that is the only long fin that I have in this whole tank. Everybody else is short. So I'm just gonna breed that fish eventually when she or he grows up. I'm assuming it's a she, because she has not gone into any caves at all ever, which is usually a good sign of being a female. And then we will see if I can get some long fin red and calico red out of that little mix. So yeah, and if she happens to be heterozygous for the long fin and short fin, then I should see 50% short and 50% long. At least that has been historically what happens. Now, if you have a different gene in your lemon long fin male,
yes,
I want to know.
Yeah, and I do.
I have a short fin lemon, and that's what I want to see what happens. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, especially because there's a lot of things. Well, and this gets at the bill, honestly, in a roundabout way, too, which is I have something called a lemon fin pleco, or a lemon pleco, but then there's also an ancestress that's just leucistic that people call a lemon pleco. And then there's the 1970 whatever strain that was brought back that is a hybrid of two wild types that someone called lemon plecos. So there's a selection of things that people have called lemon plecos over the years.
Right.
So that's why you need to have a Latin name. All right, later, Anthony Mazaral, doctor. Oh, you figured it out. Now we're in trouble. Wow, your tank looks really nice.
Thank you.
Bunny Viper, I appreciate the sentiment. I was just reading your comments. Yeah, I am. I'm pacing a lot since the surgery. Actually, I'm more comfortable pacing right now. I'm sitting, and as the hour mark approaches, this is about as long as I can tolerate to sit. Like, I'm going to be honest. But do we have any other? Do we have any other questions or thoughts in the chat that maybe we could talk about and alleviate people's worries and or cause more worries? I guess I can't promise anything. You know, someone asked, do ferrets get affected by this amendment? Quite possibly. We don't know. I mean, that's the thing, is it's so vague that it doesn't say. Now, common sense would say ferrets have been a common pet long enough that it's not super exotic. But there's a lot of places that ban ferrets, you know, municipality-wise.
California.
And, yeah, exactly. I mean, and they can do damage. They're a weasel. If they get out and breed in the population, they will easily survive. They're very smart. So my answer to that is I have no idea. but you should look into it and contact, there's probably a ferret group or a rodent, or they're probably not rodents. They're probably a weasel, but
Some sort
whatever
of small mammal group.
Yeah, whatever that would be. I feel like they would have been considered exotic at some point, but they don't feel like that. Doesn't feel like the right term anymore to me. They're an eclectic pet. Yeah. Joshua says, rip small business local fish shops. Well, that's the thing, is a lot of people are looking at this and saying it's got to be big business. They want to have 200 or 300 max species allowed in the country, neon tetras, angelfish, like easy stuff that's really cheap overseas. They want to import that, and they want to block all the stuff that your local cool shops are able to order that gives them an edge or lets them still be a competitor in the hobby. Whereas Petco, PetSmart, they never have really obscure stuff. They order from well-established places that have enough to supply the supply chain. So by definition, they're not going to have some super rare thing unless it's a one-off or an accident.
Yeah, an accident. Yeah,
I find accidents though. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look in their sorry, I was going to say,
yellow shrimp, yellow terry shrimp.
Before
at a PetSmart, because and the guy was so funny. He's like, "Oh, don't worry, they'll color up eventually once you get them home in the tank." And I was like, "Oh, I sure hope so."
Yeah.
Please sell me these $2 cherry shrimp.
Yeah, it's
I'll
like,
take all of them, thanks.
these shrimp are blue. I don't think they've been breathing oxygen for hours. I think I'll buy them for $1, but I'm worried about them. Yeah. Brian, I kind of tend to agree with you on this one. I do think that it seems like this bill may have been slipped in at the last minute, but it may be a little bit of incompetence, or at least like, oh, we need to fix an issue, and somebody literally just put a bookmark in the bill. And that's a whole topic for voting in general, like how we should do things. I think we should do things one vote at a time, like one subject, everybody votes on it, and then things wouldn't split along party lines as much, I mean, they may split along rural versus country, or agricultural versus, shift worker or whatever, but I do think that is an issue. When you vote on 30 things and you have to decide, are the 2 things I disagree with that are in the bill, am I okay with those going through just to get the other 38 things in the bill that I do want to go through? That's why they do it. It's called, they call it horse trading, is another name for it, or pork or pet projects or whatever. And if you're writing your senators about the fish stuff, I mean, feel free to write them about that as well. So, Alyssa, I want to thank you for just also being here, as a, like I said, as someone that I feel like I'm not alone. I'm not just floating out in the pool alone after surgery. I wasn't sure how things would go with this live stream, because my brain's not working quite normally still, and I was like, I might have to just say, wait a minute, and fall to the floor in agony or something. But I think we've done pretty good, but I think I am reaching my time limit, and I know that Mrijul Singh, who is a friend of mine in the all the communities, I don't know, all the online YouTube channels, he's a mod and things. He's on Rico Stan's channel later today, and he's never shown himself, but he's a really talented guy. He helped judge the Aquascape contest. So I don't want to run over Rico Stan's time slot either today. But thank you so much, Alyssa, for coming and hanging out with us. We can talk about this on another live stream soon, guys, but I just felt like this, with everything going on, I couldn't not stream, not address this concern, or at least chat about it, maybe bring down to earth the worries a little bit, but also still underline that it is important and we do need to keep, you know, our eyes on the prize. So, you know, thanks guys. Thanks, Alyssa. Alyssa, I always give a guest the last word. So bye everyone. Thank you, super chatters, lurkers, and commenters and things. If I missed a comment, leave it in the comments. I'll get to it after the live stream. And thanks again, replay crew. I'll let you have the last word, Alyssa.
Oh, don't let this turn into an underground fish network breeding black market. Okay, I'm done.